Across the pond with Barry and Chad.
Hello, good evening. Welcome back across the pond. We are back here after a 1 week break. This time, not my fault. This time because Barry was very busy. How's your week break been, Barry? And how are you doing today, bro?
Chad has been a bit insane, to be honest. Like I was saying to you on WhatsApp, the business is going really well, but it's also consuming my entire life. And so I feel like I've been working crazy hours the last week or so. Today felt like the first day where I could see the light again, so that was good. So I'm feeling a lot more positive.
Nice.
But it was a bit of a brutal week, Chad. Not much sleep was happening. How about your side?
Oh, no, good. I've been working on the sleep, actually, because I upgraded the watch. So I got the Garmin, the Phoenix 6 now, and it's got something called the body battery, which is a new metric that I didn't have before. So I've been having a lot of fun with that. For a while, I haven't been tracking my sleep, but since getting this upgrade, I've been tracking the sleep and been focusing on getting it back up to 8 hours, which I've been falling way behind for a while. So now that I've got this little body battery metric to keep an eye on, I've definitely been focusing on it. So all good. But yeah, been pretty busy as well. But yeah, I mean, I guess time just goes by and weeks roll on. We just keep doing what we do.
Exactly. But before we get off the sleep chat, isn't it a bit big to wear in bed? Like when you go to sleep, aren't you scared you're going to knock yourself out in the middle of your sleep?
Yeah, to be honest, I actually felt like that before, but I've been able to get used to it again. This one is slightly lighter, than the previous one, so it's not a crazy. It is a bit bulky, but slightly lighter, and luckily there's no hard solid objects in the bedroom, so it's fairly safe. It's fairly safe, and all those stats and the body battery makes it all worthwhile, Barry.
Yeah, definitely. I've been thinking of I also tried to use the Apple Watch for a while in bed, and I just got annoyed with it sometimes. So maybe I must try again and see if I can get it right, because I wanted to track it really well, but then I just was annoyed that I wear a watch while I was in bed.
Yeah, definitely. And it goes back to the age-old debate of having all this data, and it depends what you do with the data. If you're not actually sitting down to analyze it once a month, which I've definitely fallen very short of, there's no point. There's no point in collecting all the data. So, it is a bit of a way up from that point of view. But Barry, we've got tons to talk about today. And yeah, apology for that very loud jingle. We're getting back into things. Shall we get into it?
I think so, Chad. Let's dive into episode 83.
The week that was.
The week that was. After I played the wrong jingle, we'll fix that in the post version. But the week that was, Barry, we obviously are talking about the last 2 weeks, and we can't call this a kind of cross-continental podcast if we don't cover the Lions Springboks test series that is on the go at the moment. Before we leap into it, you've been enjoying seeing the Bokke on the field again?
It's been so good, Chad. It's reminded us that things feel like, okay, cool, if the Springboks are playing, maybe the world is getting towards a better place. And of course, we haven't seen them in a long time, Chad, probably since they won that World Cup in that famous victory over the Pommies. And so it's been really exciting to see them out again. Things are still a bit rusty when you watch them play, you're a bit like, oh, you can see the guys haven't played for a while. But very lucky to see it. And nice to have those Saturday, those rugby games with some friends, with some family, enjoying the braai and whatnot. It's always good.
Yeah, definitely is. I've thoroughly enjoyed having them back, and I couldn't believe how long it's been. I mean, obviously not ideal that there's no one in the stadiums, but always good to see the guys on the field again. Obviously, whenever people take to a field, there's naturally going to be some kind of politics behind it, and we've obviously watched the first 2 games of the Test series as we're recording this. It's the 4th of August, so we know that now it's a level field and we got all to play for next week, which is going to be a great game. Even for those of you who don't watch rugby, I'd recommend tuning in because it's going to be a big game. But after watching that first game, I mean, while I watched it, I did feel like some of the calls were a little bit off, but I kind of got over it really, really quickly. And then naturally with the equalizer in the second, I kind of had forgotten all about it. And in the press, it's been hard to miss the tidal wave that's come on the back of this mysterious video that was released by Rassie Erasmus. Now, before I go into my thoughts on it, Barry, I mean, you've obviously seen and heard lots about this on your side. I mean, have you been able to watch this video?
So I haven't watched it in its entirety, Chad, because it's crazy long. I think it's over an hour as far as I understand. But I've seen plenty of clips that have been going viral. So I've seen pieces of it, but probably just enough to be dangerous, Chad. I'm hoping you can fill me in on some of the details because I'm not sure I've got the whole picture. So run us through what this video was all about and then take us through your thoughts.
Absolutely. So for those of you who are not into rugby, Rassie Erasmus is currently the SARU, so that's the South African Rugby Union, director of rugby. And he was the coach when we were at the World Cup. But obviously, you know, he has a very high position as things stand at the moment. And it's been quite controversial that through the series, even though he is director of rugby, he is doubled up as our water boy, which I've thoroughly enjoyed seeing. And, you know, it certainly is one of those kind of decisions that seems to be, I mean, it's a gray area. So it certainly is, you know, permitted in accordance to the rules. But, you know, outright it would seem the wrong kind of side of grey. So in any case, like you said, Barry, he released the video, which is over now. It's 62 minutes long. And just because of everything I had seen of other people talking about it, obviously the press in the UK coming from all sorts of angles, you can imagine the angles that the UK press would be coming at it from. I had to go and give it a watch, just to kind of give it a bit of an assessment for myself. And I would recommend, if you are going to watch it, like you say, Barry, it's dangerous seeing clips. I would recommend watching the whole thing because he spends probably the first 10 to 15 minutes setting out the context for you know why he's doing this video, and you kind of get the feeling that the video was initially going to go to some like referee officials, and then, you know, possibly go further. He kind of mentions Supersport, potentially releasing it to Supersport. And so what you've seen is, you know, he gets to the end of this thing, and obviously it somehow then lands its way onto, you know, it gets leaked, lands its way onto Vimeo, I believe. And there's, you know, something else I wanted to address a little bit later on. But effectively, it was leaked to the public, and ultimately this hour-long video of him effectively ranting about the first game, and obviously touching various different elements. So this obviously relates to the first game, as I said. I mean, this series, Barry, as you know, happens once in 12 years, which he addresses in the context. So, you know, I guess kind of defending why he's putting out this video, and kind of saying that, you know, it is an important, you know, test series, and if there was some you know, some not so great decisions. The reason he wants to talk about it is because of the fact that the series is so important. He basically actually, so of those little clips that you've seen, Barry, I'm sure a lot of them involve hard clips of like replays of the game, where, you know, certain elements are circled just to show you exactly what he's referring to, and it comes across more like evidence than you know, him just kind of talking offhand about stuff. And effectively he summarizes some controversial refereeing decisions, of which, Barry, there are more than 25. I think that's crazy. Obviously, as we watch the game, you know, you kind of, you know, at the back of your head as a non rugby professional, just as a spectator, you could think of one or two of those that would land up in the video like this, but it goes far deeper, and it almost like unveiled another level of the game that I've not really thought about before, which I found fascinating. And beyond that, as I watched and you know, got further and further in the video, my blood just started boiling. Honestly, I just became furious, like really angry, because of how clear some of these decisions were the wrong decisions. You know, the timing of which some of these decisions were made, you know, with the proximity of the end of the game and the score line at that point in time. I think there were 2 points in it, and a couple of penalties that the Springboks should have been awarded, according to, you know, technical rugby, you know, decisions. And then a lot of these decisions involving player safety. This obviously incredibly important. I mean, rugby is such a dangerous sport. You can't just go around tackling players in the air. You can't pick players up, with their feet crossing the horizontal line and dive them into the ground. There's a whole bunch of things you just simply can't do. If a player is lying down on the floor because he thinks he is really badly injured, neck injury or something like that, you can't just rip him by his shirt and pull him up straight away. And, that's just such an unsafe thing to do. So a lot of these things that kind of hit to, the safety elements of the sport. And obviously, there are repercussions there. There should be cards taken for these kind of moves. There's a reason we've got red and yellow cards. And so, the outcome could have been so different. But I just feel like, with the volume of evidence, if you'd like, that he's presented in this video, I felt really quite angry and almost felt like this wasn't quite the fair game from the reffing team. Even when some of the other things that he addressed, Barry, shall we pause and just talk about some of it, or shall I load it all on and we kind of tackle one by one?
Let me just respond to what you've said so far, just to set some more context.
Yeah.
I think that the feeling that you had of this anger and this frustration is exactly what the whole of South Africa felt.
Yeah.
Right after the game, there was this feeling that we weren't treated fairly, and that the refereeing was very one-sided in one way. And it's not to say the Springboks didn't have some terrible tackles of their own, right? Sure. It was very much, it was the inconsistency with which these tackles were punished, and some of the big things that they were missed, like you said. And so the mood in the country was very frustrated, because, like you said, this is a big deal, and we haven't had South African sport for so long, so it's even bigger than it usually is,
of course,
because we haven't had anything else to cheer about, right? We've had very little happening in the Olympics and whatnot from South African perspective. So this series is massive. But the other side of the coin, of course, is that you sometimes wonder, like, is it complaining for the sake of complaining? And me, as like and if someone doesn't understand rugby, it's hard to understand, cool, how bad is this really compared to what it is normally, right? And if the Lions were to put together a perfectly clipped kind of 1 hour session, what could they have on the Springboks that kind of comes into what this rugby game's all about? Yeah. So I think it's that initial reaction of anger is very, very like common, and I think it's natural and understood. But I don't know how bad it really is. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have the context when it comes to rugby to understand exactly what a normal match is like compared to someone breaking it down like that.
Yeah, completely understand that. And myself enjoy rugby, but I don't study it, and I've never read the rule book per se. But I guess it's the tone that he uses, all of that kind of thing, and it's that consistency. So where he pulls up actual physical examples of something that happened in one case, and then when you see it weighed against the Springboks differently, you certainly have a double standard kind of scenario there. So it really is interesting, and I guess watching the whole thing, back to back, immediately fuels you with that kind of rage or anger. Obviously, having read the UK press and having read quite a few articles about it, listen to what everyone else has to say about it, you definitely can see all of the questions, as to why did he release this? Does this form part of a pre-game day strategy? Certainly on the second side, how does the second referee react after seeing all of this? Are they trying to be even more fair towards the Springboks? There's a risk element there too. Is the referee gonna actually maybe pay more scrutiny to the Springboks and be more punish them heavier when things do go wrong? So there's definitely that whole question about strategy, and like you say, that it's not always just the one side of it, and that's where this whole JJ thing comes into the picture. So there's this guy by the name of Jaco Johan, and the Vimeo account that it landed up on, Barry, was JJ. And there's a Twitter page as well that Rassie has been tweeting, that is JJ, Jaco Johan, and it's this mystery person who is in the camp, and seems to tweet out these kind of controversial things. Is it a genuine person, or is this kind of just an account that Rassie and Ninaber use to say some things they wouldn't like to directly out there say themselves? And so there's definitely the politics about it. I completely understand that element, but you can't watch a video like this and not wonder what happened here. Ultimately, what happened here, and why there haven't been any public responses from World Rugby, kind of addressing each of these particulars. If it is the case, Barry, that it's not as bad as he is saying it is, and some of these decisions could have gone either way, then surely a response, a public response on a matter that is public from World Rugby, could be expected. Or am I expecting a bit too much?
Yeah, Chad, World Rugby can't do that, because the moment they kind of play into this game, they're setting the precedent that any time you're unhappy with a decision, all you have to do is go on social media and rant about it, right? So World Rugby, in their position, they can't respond, because they can't condone this sort of behavior. You have to understand what a big deal it is for the World Cup winning coach to get on, whether it was leaked on purpose or by mistake or whatever, to get on video and rip into like world-class referees for an hour.
Yep.
That is a bad look on World Rugby and on those referees themselves. And the moment World Rugby put out their side of the story, then all they're doing is encouraging, for every series going forward, anytime a coach is unhappy with a loss or it feels like things have gone against them, they're just going to put that video out and point towards various clips. So I think the big issue here is that it needs to go through the right channels, and with all due respect to Rassie, I don't, whether it was on purpose or not, this should never have come out in the public. This should have been a conversation between Saru and World Rugby behind the scenes, because that's a much more tactful and better way to do it. You don't want to see the world champions kind of getting on social media. It almost felt like a YouTuber exposed video, Chad. When people expose each other for drama and for clicks and stuff. That's almost what it felt like, and you don't want that happening from a big sport like this, especially when you're talking about the world champions. You're not talking about some random side. You're talking about the world champions and the World Cup winning coach. And so I don't like to see these sorts of videos, and I totally understand why World Rugby, I don't think they should respond in this sort of way. Maybe like a press statement talking about what they're going to do going forward. And I think they're going to discipline him in some way. I think there's something there. But I don't think we're going to see a detailed breakdown of every single thing Rassie brought up, just because it would set the wrong precedent. And I don't want to see that personally. I don't want to see sport devolve into that sort of drama. I fully understand that we need to look at these things and investigate them and whatnot, but that's what these rugby boards, that's their job, is to go behind the scenes and make sure this is going the right way. And maybe Rassie felt that nothing was happening, and that's why he felt like he needed some social pressure, and that's his decision. But for me, Chad, I don't like to see this stuff aired in public, because it sours the series a little bit, don't you think?
Yeah, I get that, and you're not alone with that view, Barry. There's been absolute backlash about the video being released, and you're completely right. World Rugby are taking sort of disciplinary action here, and exactly what you said. Kind of harking on about the channels that should be used to raise feedback. So yeah, people are divided. A lot of people feel like the integrity of the game, is held in this kind of lack of public discourse over referees. So your sort of view, where it's better not to debate these kind of things. Just let the decisions run by and let the results stand. But then you get me who kind of has the view that without sort of accountability from these refs and these terrible decisions, whether we win or lose the series, I think that's completely irrelevant. I feel that if someone is not looking at this from a kind of public point of view, and the refs don't have any, they don't have to be accountable, because they're just kind of running their entities themselves, and it's this kind of boys club, and they can just do what they need. I feel like the integrity of the sport is also at jeopardy, because you potentially have very easy situations for games to be sort of fixed or swayed the wrong way. So I see both sides of it. One other element I wanted to quickly talk on, Barry, in terms of the specifics of what he was discussing, is just the lack of respect that the Springboks received from the referees. And he played two particular clips that I actually found quite hard to watch, to be honest. Especially with the backdrop of the year and a half we've had, where Sia goes up, obviously the captain Sia goes up and tries to bring very valid points up to the referee, and he kind of gets laughed at, where you have then Alwyn Jones going up, and he's taken very seriously, and he's listened to quite carefully. And I do think those things are quite worrying to see, especially in a game that should be about the sport ultimately.
Yeah, so I haven't seen that specific clip, so it's hard for me to talk on that. But if that is the case, those are the sorts of things that do need to be looked into. And I think your point about accountability is right. We do need accountability on these referees and on the way that the sport is managed and maintained and kind of overseen. But I just don't want that accountability to be social media accountability.
Sure.
I want it to be to World Rugby itself, to the various rugby unions. And I do think there are grading situations, and they do kind of look back on these games and kind of rank referees and kind of make sure they are hopefully keeping to some sort of standard that they want to set as World Rugby. So if there are conspiracies behind the scenes that is more nefarious than that, then definitely we need to dig in. But I think it's a little bit heavy-handed. Of course, there's so much emotion here, but after one game to throw the whole game into disrepute because you think that there's been a lot of bias, I think there needs to be more systemic stuff in order for us to really start to pull the strings on this and kind of try and pull it apart. I think, to be honest, Chad, a lot of this is because the rugby media have been starved for stories for a year and a half.
Sure.
And it's so exciting to have stuff happening again. And it's so exciting to see such a physical game. I mean, this series has been the most physical rugby series I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And the guys are getting stuck in, and of course there's going to be lots of drama there. So yeah, I think there are two sides to the story. I don't think there's a right and a wrong, and people are trying to figure out where they stand. Of course, the two sides of the pond have very different opinions, of course. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the last game, and we'll see what happens in that one, Chad. If we see the same sort of stuff, then maybe there's a chance to worry. But hopefully it might be rectified. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and even though the two sides of the pond have differing sort of opinions on this, I'm sure you'd be pleased that I feel the way I do about your side of the pond, and I'm kind of backing the boys from that point of view. So yeah, there's no doubt.
I was.
Go for it.
I was very happy to see you in the Springbok shirt on Instagram, Chad. I was very happy to see that. You haven't gone full pommy on us just yet.
Oh no, definitely not. Borka till I die, Barry. Let's move on then from the rugby into kind of things you find a lot more interesting into the world of tech and China.
Chad, it has been a huge week for China, and I don't even know how to tackle this topic because China is one of those places where no one actually knows what's going on. We all like to think that we've got an idea of like what's going on behind that great firewall, but in truth, unless you're actually there in China and you understand some of the politics that's going on, it's very difficult to understand what's cracking. But over the last couple of weeks, Chad, we've seen a couple of huge bombshells being dropped by Xi Jinping, the president, and the Chinese Communist Party, relating around regulation, around tech, around businesses, and around like where the country is moving forward. And all of this, you must understand, is under the backdrop of next year is a big year for China. They're going through what is a once in a decade power transition. Now, I love that wording because it's not a democratic election, Chad. We're not electing anybody. It's the same party that's going to be in charge, but it's a power transition. So some of the cabinets are going to be reshuffled and potentially the president and whatnot. So it's kind of a big moment for an authoritarian country like China because they're trying to hold control of this country, even as the rest of the world goes democratic. So we have to keep all of that in mind as the backdrop for some of these decisions. But let me just read some of the things that have happened in the last week, Chad. The first thing, the Chinese government forced an app called Didi off of all the app platforms. And Didi is a huge ride-sharing app competing with Uber and Lyft and all of those guys. Absolutely massive valuation. And almost overnight, they were forced off all the app stores, killing the business with thousands of employees, tons and tons of revenue just off because they didn't meet some sort of regulation or some sort of internal thing, right? And that's across the world. It's not just in China, but they're a Chinese company, so they're struggling. The next thing, which is huge, is that Xi Jinping has been worried about private education being hijacked by capital. Those are his words. And the idea is that he doesn't want private tutors and external education companies to be taking the roles of the teachers and kind of the public school teachers and educators. And so what he did was he basically said overnight, well, not him, his party, overnight said that all tutoring companies must become non-profits overnight. So you're not allowed to make profits.
Wow.
Any for-profit education company has to kind of disappear. That, Chad, wiped $1 trillion off the stock market because education companies' share prices went down by like 90 to 95%. There was one story of a billionaire who was running an education company who lost $68 billion worth of paper wealth in a few hours because of this.
Wow.
Absolutely crazy. Another thing that happened was that he announced a new kind of regulation for anyone wanting to IPO in China or internationally. So if you're a Chinese company and you want to IPO on the New York Stock Exchange, you have to go through a round of cybersecurity reviews to check that you are not kind of cooperating with the US or anything that's to do with national security. So if you're a Chinese company, you want to go and list in Europe or in the US or wherever it is, you have to go through all of these checks to make sure that the cybersecurity is in top-notch shape. And in my mind, Chad, what that means is that they're going to put bugs into your code so they can watch what you're doing all the time. That's kind of what that says to me, have that sort of surveillance. We could go on and on and on and on, but it's an example of China's government getting even more strong-handed and kind of strangling a lot of entrepreneurship and tech developments and just basic businesses in their country because of worries about national security and about national prosperity. So China's growth has been slowing for the last couple of years now, and they're starting to worry about the age crisis they have, where there were too many old people and not enough young people coming into the workforce as kind of a result of the one-child policy for so many years.
Yep.
And they've got this progressive kind of authoritarianism where they're trying to hold on to the control of the country and kind of quell the discontent they're seeing in the middle class. But what it's going to do, Chad, like you said, we've seen $1 trillion wiped off the stock market, people losing jobs, money, absolutely crazy changes overnight. Imagine you've built an education company over the last 12 years. You've poured your life and soul into this thing, and all of a sudden your government says, cool, you must be non-profit from tomorrow. It's just absolutely insane, Chad, and I don't know how to think about it. Do you have any thoughts?
Whoa, that is really crazy. $1 trillion. How can you comprehend that amount of money? But it's understandable. Based on all of those measures that have been implemented. And like you say, with what everyone knows about China already, and well, even though that is not much, there always is that kind of element of risk there. But when you get some of these intentions kind of clarified, it almost, for a lot of people, it almost confirms, some kind of, what is the word I'm looking for? Potentially there's some contingencies there that they've put in place that are not coming true because of all of these measures. But no one would have foreseen an education app. You couldn't have a contingency in place for that, Barry. And I just can't believe that. What is education without private education and tuition and apps? Such a great way of learning. And if you now don't have people able to actually make money from that, ultimately you're not going to have people producing those kind of apps, and your education system is going to suffer at the end of the day. So why China would do that, I really don't know, especially when you think of some of these education apps, Barry, and a lot of them are like to learn coding as well. Tons of apps to learn coding, and we obviously know how ahead China is in the tech space. This kind of move, especially when you've got that aging population and not enough youngsters, you want to boost up the youngsters you do have to be able to lay the groundwork for the future. So I'm shocked about this as well. But it does also, I suppose, talk to being able to control the material that is used, in the education system, and ultimately, if you don't have those private players, you're much easily, more able to control what is taught in the public education system. So I think it's very concerning as well. The stock markets is temporary, you'd say, but I hope that the lasting effects, aren't as bad as they could be.
Yeah, Chad, it's going to be tough to see what happens in the next couple of decades, because I think this is modern communism at work. That's all it is. This is pure nationalism. It's this idea that we want to control everything. We want to control everything from birth to death. If you live in China, if you work in China, you start a company in China, if you're not on the good books of the big party and you're not kind of contributing to the communal wealth and communal prosperity, we're gonna regulate you. I mean, we saw what they did to Jack Ma, where they put him in house arrest for weeks and kind of made him disappear from the world because he wasn't meeting certain central bank regulations. It's really scary to see, and I think that in a few hundred years' time, we're going to look back on this part of China's history as some serious human rights concerns and issues, because what you're doing is you're fully constraining the freedom of the people inside your country, and I think it's confusing and it's difficult to deal with because they are such an economic powerhouse. It's very easy to look at, let's say, North Korea, for example, and say, cool, that's evil. We all agree that's a horrible thing to do, and that kind of control is just not on, and we're happy. The only reason we haven't got in there is because they've got nukes, right? But when it comes to China, they control the global economy. They control the global supply chain. They have incredible economic, political, and military power. How do you kind of do anything there? How can the democratic way or the Western world have any influence on anything that's happening in China? And that's what makes this scary, is that the power that they hold as a country and as an economic powerhouse is huge. But like you said, the incentives here are just bad all round for Chinese citizens. You're going to have no if you're a foreign investor, there's no way you're going to invest in China now, because your investment could disappear overnight by something that's outside of your control. It's almost like the same political risk that you might apply to an African investment. You now have to apply a similar political risk to anything investing in China. And that was kind of the growth capital of the world for a good 10, 15, 20 years. That's where the returns were. That's where the yields were. And so now you're going to see all that capital flying out of the country. You're going to see talented tech entrepreneurs leaving China, because why would you build a company there? They're going to go to the US and to Europe and around the world. And yeah, it's just... Chad, I'm passionate about this stuff because I don't understand why. I don't get it. I think that it's hard to know what to do with it, or what to do with the information. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, completely. It is such a web, to be honest, especially when you are navigating the web with so many unknowns. That's the hardest thing. Some other concerns I see, Barry, from Tencent. One of the shareholders would obviously have a big effect in the South African kind of stock markets too. But there's concerns there that curbs on kind of gaming time. So actual restrictions on how long people can spend on their phones playing games. That's obviously really, really damaging as well for all of the gaming markets that are in a good place at the moment.
Huge, Chad. I didn't even touch that, but gaming's a huge one, because China, the party has kind of realized that a lot of productivity is being lost, or they perceive a lot of productivity being lost, or kind of addictions happening through these games and whatnot, and they want to do what's best for their people in their minds. And so, like you say, they're going to start pulling these regulations in, and it had a huge effect on gaming shares. Tencent are one of their major owners is Naspers here in South Africa, and so it had a huge dip in our stock market, took the whole JSE down because of how big Naspers is. And so these things have huge implications, Chad. And the fact that they can just kill industries, just so much, kill industry, bang, 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 just reminds you how much control this party actually has. And if you're not in their good books, if you're not with them, if you're not working with them from start till finish, your company's just not going to have a chance to succeed. And I don't know how they're going to reconcile that. If you're a young engineer, a talented engineer in China right now, you've got to be thinking of moving somewhere else, because you have no idea what you'll be able to do, because 2 years down the line, you've invested your whole life into something and it disappears overnight. And so, yeah, Chad, it's really scary. I don't know what's going to happen. We'll have to wait and see how things unfold. But lots of food for thought, that's for sure.
Well, we'll certainly monitor it. I mean, like you say, Barry, the fact that no one can really do anything about it to get involved. The fact that you mentioned us looking back in 10 years' time, and looking at this from a different angle, from like a human rights sort of angle. It's just troubling, because we're there now. and there's not much anyone can do about it, and that's the hardest thing about this. So we'll certainly keep monitoring that, but like you say, probably a while before we have any more on that. Let's then move on to our next segment.
Stuff I found interesting.
We've been talking a whole lot about space, Barry. I mean, these people who listen to our podcast must think we are obsessed.
Well, I am, Chad. I don't know about you, but I'm obsessed with space. So that makes one of us.
Well, yeah, one of us. I mean, I'm interested in it because you're interested in it, Barry, but I had to bring this one up today just because we've been talking about it so much and because the space race is happening in front of our eyes. And because you mentioned the kind of threshold of space, does it count? Are you there? The FAA have now revised their requirements of being able to call yourself an astronaut. And obviously the timing of this couldn't be more perfect, Barry. So they've clarified the current requirement, which is that you need to travel beyond 50 statute miles above the surface of the Earth as a flight crew on an FAA or AST licensed or permitted launch or re-entry vehicle, which you could say Branson, met both of those tests. But the second test, which I think is a new test, or maybe it's also clarified, is that you need to demonstrate activities during your flight that were essential to public safety or contribute to human space flight safety. And so, yeah, basically, just having sort of all of this cash and resources and being able to propel yourself into the boundaries of space doesn't make you an astronaut, which I thought quite funny.
Chad, I like this a lot. I really do, because I have such respect for the real astronauts who've been pioneering this for so long and all that. And I would hate to see the word being cheapened. Like a lot of us, when we're young, Chad, one of those common things is I want to grow up to be an astronaut. It's very aspirational. It's very kind of only the top of the top, and a very select group of people get to have that title. And I would hate, like you say, to have all these billionaires become astronauts because they've paid $250K to go up in one of Branson's space planes. Right, so I love this. I think that it's awesome. I think that astronauts should be kept as a very sacred term for those who are genuinely changing the space world, kind of actually doing the work. And if you go up there as a passenger, that's what you were, Chad. You were a passenger. You weren't an astronaut. You just went on a trip to space.
Yep.
And whether you were in space or out of space, or you saw into space, or however far up you were, it doesn't matter, because you're not an astronaut until you actually do something of value, Chad.
Exactly, and it's the months of training that you see the astronauts going through, all leading up to that one moment, and it's all on the line. Whereas, like you say, these are just passengers who ultimately walk into a vessel that goes wherever it goes. It comes back. No sort of training and specific sort of contribution necessary. So I like that. I like that the FAA are bringing people back down to earth. Excuse the pun. Barry, the next thing that I found interesting this week is to do, I think it's 2 weeks ago now, is to do with the Olympics. Obviously, we spoke about it in anticipation, and we're very excited to be able to watch all sorts of different sports happen. I've been enjoying it, but I certainly haven't watched as much as I thought I would be able to. And that is purely down to the fact that, I'm now a working individual. I'm not in the good old days of being a student, able to spend hours in front of the TV watching, especially the time difference as well, Barry. How have you been finding it? Have you been able to watch a couple of different sports?
I'm in the same position as you, Chad. I also thought I'd watch a lot more, but I've been working so hard, it's been tough to find the time. I've kind of been using my DSTV to record bits and pieces, and I've tried to catch the South Africans when they've been in action. But like you say, with the time zone changes and the fact that we actually have to pay bills, it's a bit tough to sit on the couch and watch for hours at a time, unfortunately. And also, for some reason, Chad, without the crowds and then without the stadiums, it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't really feel like there's those epic moments. Even when something amazing is happening. So I watched the high jump final and really enjoyed that. But there wasn't the crowds doing the slow clapping and any of that, so it kind of lost a little bit of its sparkle. So yeah, unfortunately, a weird Olympics, but it's been a weird year. So what do you expect, right?
Absolutely. If anything, I think we can just be grateful that it's going ahead, and for all those athletes who have spent years getting ready for this, I'm sure it's not a lesser of an Olympics for them. So yeah, great to watch that in any case. But what I wanted to bring up today, which I thought quite funny, is I came across this clip. Now I don't know if you've seen it, Barry.
I have.
But an Australian swimming coach, Dean Boxall, who's the coach of Ariane Titmus, and the actual race that went on before this little clip happened was incredible, and I loved it, and I kind of understand the reaction, but this is hilarious.
Looks sort of like Doc Brown. I mean, he is going.
For those who are listening, he is losing his shit.
Goodness.
Dancing around, punching the air, just absolutely going mental. But the best part, Chad, is the poor little Japanese lady whose job it is to kind of make sure everyone stays in their pens and make sure they stay in. And she looks powerless behind this 6-foot Australian man. And she's desperately trying to calm him down, trying to keep him in. But he's running around and punching the air. It's such a wonderful expression of just pure joy and kind of ecstasy, Chad, that his athlete did so well.
Yeah, absolutely. An absolute crazy reaction. I thought it was fascinating because ultimately in sports you kind of always contain the excitement to a level that you're decent, at least in public. And Barry, just going berserk and crazy as you described it. I mean, he was at one stage humping the actual I don't know how to explain it. Totally lost his mind.
Only an Australian, Chad. I mean, the Australians are known for their eccentricity. They are very kind of expressive. If you ever watch an Australian TV show or a news show, whatever, they're always having a good time. And so it's a typical Australian, Chad. But like you say, I'm not sure how it was taken in Japan, which is much more conservative. Yep. I don't think the Japanese would really love him humping all sorts of things in their aquatic center. But Chad, a nice moment of levity for all of us. And I think that if that's your coach and he's so excited for you, it must make you feel like $1 million.
Absolutely. And watching her reaction to the videos as well, you can see this was years of hard training, and ultimately she pulled through on the day, and at the very last minute managed to win the race. So yeah, incredible. Barry, the last thing I found interesting this week, just because we spoke about it so long ago, and we have to kind of touch back on things rather than just throw it here and then forget about it forever, is the EU digital tax initiative. I don't know if you remember us talking about that. And EU eventually, I think after we spoke about it, got together and agreed certain rate of tax that all of these big tech companies were going to pay, and basically, since that was decided, there's been a lot of countries kind of figuring out whether it's the right thing to do, because ultimately, these giants are just going to incorporate in different jurisdictions. But obviously, this EU tax kind of enforces itself where the users are using it, so it doesn't really matter where you're incorporated at the end of the day. But yeah, a lot of regions around the world are kind of questioning whether this is or isn't the right decision. But regardless, I at one point in time, Barry, placed an advert on Google. And I got an email 2 weeks ago basically saying that our ad rates are going up now because we effectively have to pay more tax. And so what they're doing is they're passing on that extra tax. And ultimately, I find it very interesting.
It's going to hurt small businesses, Chad.
Yeah.
And it's one of those discussions we had right at the beginning, was that it all sounds very good in regulation. We're cool. We're going to try and fix this. We're going to try and make sure that these companies don't get away with all of this. But the people actually who are going to suffer are the small businesses who rely on this advertising in order to make things work. If you're running a low margin business, those Google ad rates are your bread and butter. Like, you're trying to make sure your cost of acquisition is lower than what your customer lifetime value is. And the moment your cost of acquisition goes up even a tiny bit, Chad, it can throw your whole business into disarray. And so, like you say, I think now where the rubber hits the road and people start to realize, oh, wait, all of those petitions that we signed, all of those fights we had in the courts, all of that stuff actually has an economic consequence. It doesn't just go nowhere. And these big companies don't care. They'll pass it on. It doesn't matter to them. You're a drop in the bucket to them.
Sure.
But they'll pass it on. And if you're a little cupcake business and you really use Google Ads to reach people in your area, you're gonna find this hurts a bit. And so, yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens in the next couple of years and see if there's a fight back against this in the other direction, Chad. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, you could have predicted this. If you looked at what was going to happen, you could have predicted it. And again, the discussion around these big tech companies is so interesting because it's so multifaceted in every single direction.
Absolutely, and the other thing, I guess, is the fact that there isn't really any other competitor that, you know, the person with a cupcake business has to go to advertise their products. You know, this is the way the world works now. You have to advertise through Google or Facebook, and you know, basically extra taxes getting passed on to you, like you said, really can have a profound impact. So yeah, I thought let's just quickly touch on that before we look ahead.
Looking ahead.
Barry, I wanted to bring this one up quickly, and hopefully it doesn't play any sound. Let's have a look quickly. So I'm currently on a BBC page, and effectively what this is a virtual reality game, if you'd like, that's been put together that is an emulation of what people of color experience on a day-to-day basis. So obviously, you know, with the Black Lives Matter movement in the last year, there were a lot of people who sympathized with it, but had never experienced had never experienced this kind of racism and these subtle tones and all these kind of things in real life. And so what they've done is put together a game that lets you put a virtual reality headset on and experience different situations, job interviews, as a child on the in the playground, sitting there and kind of seeing how people interact with people differently, and so I think this is such a positive thing to be able to really show you, how what it's like ultimately if you've never been in this position, and obviously a very interesting use of tech, to have a really positive effect, I think. So as this is playing on, Barry, I'd love to get some of your thoughts on this initiative.
I love this, Chad. I really do. And I think it's one of the great opportunities for virtual reality. I remember reading an article a long time ago. I can't remember who wrote it, but the writer said that virtual reality is an empathy machine. Yep. That's kind of the opportunity here, is that you have the opportunity to put yourself literally in somebody else's shoes and get to experience a little bit of their kind of environment and their kind of lifestyle and their way of being. And I think that we struggle to do that in our own context. Like, Chad, if we grow up as a white person, we've got no idea how to relate to the experience of a person of color. We've got no idea how to understand the challenges, and you can talk until you're blue in the face, but until you experience something, you don't really have a sense of what that does to your psychology, to your self-worth, to all of the things that matter when it comes to a human being. And so examples like this are a great way of taking a step towards that future, Chad, where hopefully we can start to maybe experience just a taste, just a little piece of this, which will hopefully help us to become more empathetic and help to understand what our fellow humans are going through. And so obviously the racism is a big conversation right now, but I think there's lots of ways you can use VR in these sorts of aspects to show you different parts of the human experience. And whether it's through storytelling, whether it's through kind of fictional stuff, whether it's through non-fiction training, any of the stuff that comes through, this is one example of where VR can be not just a game, not just kind of a gimmick, but something that can genuinely help us move forward as a society. And so I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really, really enjoyed it coming across my feed just because of that positive element of it. And it only is a matter of time before VR becomes a normal thing, Barry, before each of us have headsets in our homes, before they're, not so expensive. Just like 4K TVs have normalized and many other things in the past. And, the more of us who can strap these on and go through this experience. I know books were able to do a similar thing for a lot of people during following the movement. But you know, I think because of how real VR is, and that goes right down to its title. I think it can only bring about positive change, and so I think that's a really, really good thing. The other thing I wanted to chat about in looking ahead this week, Barry, to just quickly switch back to the big tech companies. Is YouTube, and we spoke about their subscription model a couple of times now, and just how expensive it is to simply, if you want to just either get rid of ads, or you want to be able to download videos onto your device, which you used to be able to do for free, you now have to pay this big subscription that now, quite awkwardly lumps in Google Music. Is it YouTube Music? YouTube Music.
Yeah.
And obviously, Spotify and Apple Music have been around for some time, and the majority of people already have those offerings. So if it was free, if you could say YouTube Music was free, I'm sure a lot of people would give it a try. But to bundle it in and to beef up that subscription price in a kind of, one or nothing type scenario, I've certainly felt quite salty when I did have YouTube Premium for a couple of months, and it's at the stage where now I'm okay with just watching the ads. So what YouTube are now trialing is Premium Lite, and that would effectively let you get all the benefits of the YouTube part of it. So where you don't have to watch ads, and you're able to download videos, all of that kind of thing, and you don't have to get YouTube Music. What do you think?
Chad, I think it's brilliant, and I don't understand why YouTube Music is a thing.
Completely.
It really annoys me. Like one every 3 times I open the app, I have to go through 4 different pop-ups to try and ignore the free trial to YouTube Music. And I don't understand what are they trying to compete with. Like, if they were going to try and build an Apple Music or Spotify competitor, then build a separate app and make it a whole separate platform.
Definitely.
But this idea of trying to match the videos to the music and trying to make it all work together, it's just not a good interface. And it's not a good way to listen to music. I don't know, who are their customers, Chad? Who is actually enjoying YouTube Music? I would love to meet one of you. So if you're listening to this and you're YouTube Music fanatic, please let us know, because I don't get it. And so this makes all the sense in the world, Chad. And this is something that I might consider paying for, because if you can strip out all the fuss and just make sure I don't have to look at another ad of something I don't actually want, it would be really powerful and really valuable. It makes a lot of sense to me, and I never want to see YouTube Music again, I'll be honest.
I'm with you. Nothing further to add on that, Barry. Let's then move on to our last segment.
Develop and grow.
Chad, so as always, I've got a quote for you, and I've got a quote for everybody, and it's something that I came across in the last week or so, and I've been thinking about it a lot, and I think it's really powerful. And it's a framing I haven't heard in a long, or maybe not in a long time, maybe not even forever. So I'm curious to get your thoughts, Chad. It's from an author called Ben Casnocha, and he's also an entrepreneur, though I can't remember what he's built, but he's built some companies, but a much better writer, in my opinion. I've been following for a while. And the quote goes like this: "Every opportunity is attached to a person. Opportunities do not float like clouds in the sky. They're attached to people. So if you're looking for an opportunity, including one that has a financial payoff, you're really looking for a person." And I love this framing, Chad, because so many of us, we can get a little bit salty with ourselves, because we like, when is things going to turn around for me in my life? When am I going to find this magical, golden ticket that's me dropped in my lap, and all of a sudden I'm going to figure everything out? So whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's a business, whether it's something you're trying to achieve in your life, we've got this idea that other people are luckier than us. Other people have these opportunities, have these kind of things that happen to them, and it feels serendipitous. It feels like luck. But what this is kind of saying is that that's not actually the case. You can't just wait for opportunity to come out of the air, Chad. It's all about building relationships, building networks with people, because that's what happens in the real world, whether you like it or not. People do business with people that they like. People will date people that they can get along with and they can build relationships with. And everything that good that comes out of the human experience, Chad, comes out of other people, right? It's all about building those relationships and that rapport. And I just love this idea that opportunities are attached to these people. And so instead of trying to find that golden ticket, that opportunity that's going to change your life, how about investing in your friend, investing in meeting a new person? investing in getting out of your comfort zone and kind of going to a new event and trying to strike up a conversation with somebody. All of those things that can be difficult for us because we like to stay in our little bubble, especially as introverts. It's very difficult for us to do that. If we actually were able to reach out and speak to people and realize that the opportunities and the luck and all of the stuff, the good stuff that's going to happen to us throughout our life comes first from building those human relationships. I just think that's so cool.
It is cool, and it's a great quote, especially if you haven't sort of thought of the world like this, and especially like you say, if you have that perspective of luck, or you think that it's all in you, it's all in you to get up early in the morning and read for however many hours a day after doing a crazy gym session, and ultimately you can do that until your face turns blue, and still not get anywhere if you've got the wrong attitude and if you don't have the right perspectives on certain things, and it's true, and it's in the core of this quote. It's not about what you know, Barry. It's about who you know, which is always the cliche, but it talks to the exact same thing. And so from that point of view, I like the kind of the truth in it. There's a point of it that I don't like though, and that is kind of thinking of people, sort of thinking of people as opportunities in the way that you kind of use your network and you use people to better yourself. And I really don't like that. I don't think that's the spirit of this quote. I really don't. But it's ultimately something to think about in just the way that you conduct yourself as well. Is respect that network and be a nice person ultimately. It's all about that, those actual intentions, and people can feel when you're using them ultimately. People don't like people they don't like, but they really don't like people that they think are using them. So that's just my kind of off the bat thoughts on that, but I think it's a great quote.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Chad. I was going to do the whole plot twist at the end with that whole point. So thank you for bringing that up. It's so important that that's the case. We're not saying that opportunities that people are opportunities. We're saying that opportunities are attached to people.
Yes.
And it's a very, very difficult, very, very clear distinction, and very difficult to kind of make sure you don't blur the lines there, because a lot of us will do that. A lot of us get caught in that trap of we want to be friends with this person because we want something from them, or we feel like we're going to get something because we've shown them some respect or whatever. And that's just not how humanity works. And we all have these cases in our lives, Chad. We feel like, is this person actually my friend, or are they just using me for X, Y, or Z? Is this person actually interested in me, or are they just trying to get to someone that I know?
Yep.
And that kind of stuff feels so sour. It's one of the worst parts of the human experience, and it's something you have to stay away at all costs. And so the message is very much build relationships, because it's what life is about. Life is about building relationships and not expecting anything in return.
Yeah.
But the beauty of that is the more you do that, the more genuinely you try and help people and you try and put yourself out there, you're going to come across opportunities in an ad hoc kind of way. And then you can take advantage of those. But it's a very important point. People are not opportunities, but opportunities are attached to people.
So true, Barry. So true. And that distinction is the key. But you can't deny, like I say, you can't deny the quote, because it is completely true. And it's beautiful in a way. It is beautiful in that, everything that you potentially looking for is all you need to do is go out, be a nice person, meet people, and ultimately you'll naturally attract someone who has that next opportunity for you. But it's beautiful. I love the quote. I think you had something else to add.
Yes. So you kind of trick my memory there. It's something that I was fun employed for a while after leaving RMB, and a lot of friends were a bit confused as to what I was doing. I got a lot of questions about okay, so what do you do with your time? Like, what are you trying to do? And I've had a couple of friends who've done a similar journey, trying to go a more creative route or trying to do something more kind of off the beaten path.
Yep.
And a lot of them would be like, okay, I've sat at home, I've read all these books, I've done the courses, but now what is happening? Like, I don't know what to do. Like, how do I take the next step? And my answer was always, you just got to be talking to people. Like, you just got to be talking to people, reaching out to people you haven't spoken to in a while, like reaching out to people you admire and trying to get on a phone call with them. And that sort of networking and that sort of hustling is so important, because that's how you move forward. You don't move forward sitting at home reading books, right? Unfortunately, you move forward through action. You move forward through actually getting out there and putting your name out there. The best analogy in my mind is that if you want a dream job, like one of those jobs that everyone is dying to get, they're not on job portals. You have to get away from that idea that you're going to apply to all these jobs on the online job portals and those are going to be the best ones. It just doesn't work like that. The best jobs are not advertised because they're the best jobs, because people are already using them and whatever. And the way you get those jobs is through knowing people and through building relationships and through networking and all of these things that feels icky to some people, but it's just how the world works. And you have to understand that. You cannot think that by applying to 20 jobs on job portals you're going to find this magical perfect job, because you're not. It's going to be a run-of-the-mill thing. There's a reason that recruiters exist. There's a reason that networking matters, and I think it's a good analogy not just for work but for the rest of life. Relationships above everything else. Everything that is good from the human experience comes from relationships. It doesn't come from money. It doesn't come from cars. It doesn't come from any of that stuff. It comes from relationships. And so the more you can invest in that and the more you can focus on that as a goal and objective and kind of something you're trying to work towards, you're going to be happier, you're going to be wealthier, you're going to be healthier, all of the years, Chad.
Love it. What a great way to end this episode. Just love it, Barry. Going back to the basics, and time to focus on our relationships a bit more, which ultimately it's so core to making us who we are. We always talk about the 5 closest friends who kind of shape us, and ultimately all of those relationships, as far as you can expand it. Obviously there's a limit to how many people you can know and remember, and there's all sorts of apps at keeping track of people's names and facts about different people and conversations you've had and all that kind of thing, and that's the icky bit that I don't like. So try and keep it within your actual maximum capacity ultimately, and always just be genuine and a nice person. Great place to end this epic episode of Across the Pond, Barry. No doubt we'll be back again next week, maybe the week after, who knows when we'll be back, but it'll be a good episode whenever that is.
Damn straight. And that's why you have to make sure you're subscribed. If you're listening right now, you have to make sure you're subscribed, because then you'll get every single new episode hot off the press. I've really enjoyed this one, Chad. It really flowed nicely. I think we covered a lot of difficult topics, which is quite cool. And hopefully if you're listening or you're watching right now, you got something of value from this. We always have fun and we hope you do too. And as always, if you got this far, you are an absolute legend and we really appreciate you.
Awesome. Well, that's all for us today. We'll see you again next time.